was only a few years later when they began to organize for the Organization of African Unity that they designated African Freedom Day, African Liberation Day. And it was meant to be a source of a motivating force, because the rest of the continent, it was only 30-odd nations that were organizing in the Organization of African Unity. And if you understand that Africa have well over 50 nations, and many of them were still struggling under European rule. Some of them were knee-deep in armed struggle, if you understand what I'm saying. You know, everybody didn't achieve their liberation through diplomacy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the further along we go in history, we're going to find it more and more difficult to achieve our liberation through diplomacy.
That's right, too.
And that's only if we begin, as we talked a little earlier about understanding, and I'm going to borrow from an ancient Asian dude named Sun Tzu, who says, know yourself, know your enemies, 100 battles, 100 victories. It's important that we do know ourselves, but we also have to know our position. We have to know, who are these people? What is this entity, this system, or whatever you want to describe it as, that has us worried about liberation? What is that? Because in America, we're talking about breaking the chains and waking up the African in us. We are African people. We are part of the African diaspora, that world of Africans that are scattered outside the continent. And we are everywhere. We everywhere, going in suburbs, you know, African person, go anywhere in these small Iowa town somewhere. We everywhere, but we still not free. But what is freedom? Freedom is such an abstract term. What is freedom? You know, a few years ago, one of the scholars, you know, I interviewed here in Detroit, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, I posed a question to him. What came first, Pan-Africanism or nationalism? And I asked the question because I know that Detroit has such a rich Pan-Africanist history. We have so many Pan-Africanists in here in Detroit. But for a great extent, before we applaud, let's understand that sometimes Pan-Africanism can have you divert your energies away from the struggles that's right in front of you. We're trying to free Africa from Detroit. We want Africa to be free. We want to free everywhere but where we at. African people in America are a distinct nation. I think that's why Brother Bomati asked me up here. He wanted me to talk about that. He wanted me to talk about Negro, colored, black, and African American and New Africa.
All right.
Because I'm only one of them. And I can explain that because we are a unique nation here. We were born Africans here. But when they drug us here against our will through force and fraud, we spoke different languages.
That's right.
We had different traditions and customs. We came from different areas of the continent.
That's right.
You know, it was approximately 5,000 miles of coastline that they derived the Africans that comprise who we are today. Whereas some of us are short and stocky, some are tall and slim. You know, some are lighter, a little darker. You know, some noses are broader, some are a little more aquiline. You know, it's a number of reasons. But during that slave ship, Professor Sterling Stuckey said it was during that boat ride, that several month-long boat ride, that we began to forge unity among ourselves. We started forgetting some of those things that kept us separated. We were no longer Ife and Hausa or Wolof. You know, we was all in the same boat together. We had to figure out what we gonna do. We didn't figure it out yet because we still talking about it.
That's right.
But the point is, through the default of our situation, we became unified. And through the struggle, we've tried to forge a unity as black people. One of the most dynamic struggles happened in that same church that got set up a year ago. Brother Denmark Vesey, he began to organize what would have been one of the largest slave insurrections. However, it failed due to Iraq. And we talk about stop snitching, y'all think we just talking about the streets. But we gotta learn to keep our mouths shut when it comes to the struggle as well. We gotta respect the struggle. And everything ain't for everybody. You know, we still have to learn, need to know. And but he tried to organize, and he organized his lieutenants based on different African ethnicities. Because South Carolina was still one of the last states that was bringing in people long after 1808. They would bring them in, you know, right before so-called Civil War, whatever that was. But he organized Africans based on their tribal origins, figuring if we create a joint chiefs of staff at the top, that the unity will flow down among the people. It's like, you know, bringing the Crips and the Bloods and the Gang Disciples and the Vice Lord together and saying we're gonna organize the hood for real. And he tried to do that because he understood that we are one people, we have one struggle, we have one common enemy. But we don't understand what we need because while we pursuing nationalism, you can be a nationalist and a Pan-Africanist at the same time. Because any true nationalist cannot be just for himself or his or her nation. We have to be for the rest of the African world because we are part of that. But you have to pursue your own liberation first. Before Kwasi Akwamu proposed the United States of Africa, he liberated Ghana. Do y'all understand what that means? He's known as the modern father of Pan-Africanism. He believed in, you know, global African unity. He worked diligently to the day he died to make that happen. But he liberated his homeland first. Do you understand what that means? He was a Ghanaian. He knew he was a Ghanaian. He knew he was an African, but he knew he was a Ghanaian in Africa. And he struggled first to liberate Ghana. Who's trying to struggle New Africa? We worried about a lot of things, but like I say, is we struggling just to struggle, or we struggling to win? And if we struggling to win, how do we describe, or what constitutes victory? What does it look like?
Well,
a new law, some legislation, some brutal cop going to jail. Is that what we trying to achieve? Is we trying to create a better place under oppression? Are we trying to make oppression more appeasing and appealing? Is that what we're struggling for? I mean, actually, it's a question for you to ask yourself. It's not the answer to me. It's something you can take home with you and ask yourself, what are you really struggling for? Because that ain't liberation to me. I ain't looking for a better place on the plantation. I ain't not just a better job or new laws or legislation, because that ain't liberation. Because we still in their framework. We still under under their rule, their domination. And we got to step out of that. And we got to tie all these little struggles, such as crime and unemployment and health care and education. We got to tie all those things to national liberation. They all have to, at the end of the day, if we're not trying to create schools that's going to be liberation schools, I don't care if they public, charter, or whatever. But if they're not liberation schools, they still useless. Right. We preparing our kids to go work for somebody in the system. And you want to understand why these brothers out here robbing? Because under capitalism, the system that the enslavement of our people created the seed to build, it's built on surplus labor. The last time we had full employment, we were in chains. Yeah, we gotta wrap this up. We got a keynote speaker. We got a performance supposed to be getting set up. That's what I was waiting on. So, bring up the.